Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
In this edition of Cut the Clutter 239, we look at two diverse, different, and distant issues. First one on something that happened on the Pakistani side of Kashmir, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, and second, then we shift to Bengaluru in the south of India. So, first of all, in Pakistan occupied Kashmir, in its capital city, Muzaffarabad, something unusual happened. Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, decided to deliver his Independence Day speech in Muzaffarabad in what is called as the assembly of what Pakistan calls Azad Kashmir or what we call Pakistan occupied Kashmir. So he delivered his speech there. Why did he do it? His obvious message was, this was a reply to the changes that India has brought about in the Kashmir or that part of Kashmir which is under India's control right now. What we call as the state or union territory to be in October of Jammu and Kashmir. And what was his message? I would say that I heard it carefully. It's about a 37 minute speech. It was a bit bizarre. It also showed some kind of a meltdown. And I think the harder Imran Khan tried to sound statesmanly, the most disastrous it became. It did ultimately became like a rant. It could be the rant of any ultra secular left Modi or RSS critic on Jantar Mantar. And those rants can be delivered in Delhi as well. They can be delivered in Delhi, they can be delivered in JNU, in central Delhi, in Lutyens Delhi, they can be delivered anywhere. But it didn't work with Imran Khan because he is not either secular or leftist nor even Indian. So he made this entire speech a personal critique of Narendra Modi and the RSS. And the metaphor he used, again very interesting but very juvenile, he kept on saying that RSS is India's Nazi party and Modi is the new Hitler. And then he said, then he went on and he said, just as Hitler had his final solution, Modi has his final solution. Just as Hitler, Modi now says that he will bring prosperity to Kashmir. In his speech, Hitler had also said while invading Russia that he will give Russians freedom from communism, etc., etc. Now, two countries dealing with each other bilaterally. Everybody knows Pakistan and India have problems, and everybody knows and understands that Pakistan and Imran have issues with what's happened on the Indian side of Kashmir. But this kind of invocation of Hitler and the Nazi party and the Second World War, just a day after his president in his speech said that we should now declare a social media war on India. I mean, it's almost like Imran Khan has acquired a Churchill complex. So he and his president and the political establishment in Pakistan is beginning to think they are Churchills and this is Hitler's India and they are fighting the Second World War all over again. This is not just delusional, it's also a case of delusions of grandeur because they are not Churchills. Now for Imran Khan to lecture India, there are problems in India. Many of us are fretting about this. Many of us are ranting over it. Many of us are complaining about it. But for him to say, look at his chart sheet on India, but not really India, Narendra Modi and RSS. Look at his chart sheet that they have completely silenced the parliament. That's not true. If some of the opposition has lost its way, it's the opposition's fault. Nobody stopped them from speaking, but a lot of the opposition spoke and they are speaking. Second, he says they've completely silenced India's judges and the judiciary. Not true, but let us not get defensive and let me not get defensive. Government of India will defend itself, but let me just say, what has he done to his own opposition? His entire opposition is locked up in jail now for a long time. Just last week, he as his government has been complaining about Government of India's lockdown in Kashmir and the arrest of activists and politicians. And these are preventive detentions. So nobody is really incarcerated in bad jails. and the politicians in Kashmir are nobody likes his liberty to be denied. But this is different from what he is doing to Nawaz Sharif, what he is doing to Asif Ali Zardari, what he is doing to several MLAs and MPs, or what they call as MNAs and MPAs in Pakistan of his opposition parties. He's locked up not just Nawaz Sharif but also his daughter, Maryam Nawaz now, she's in jail. He's locked up Asif Zardari, the former president. He's locked up Shahid Haqqan Abbasi, a former prime minister. The only living former president or head of state not in jail is in exile, that is Musharraf. Not just that, in this last 10 days, while they've been shedding these sort of pious tears about civil liberties in Kashmir, he's also locked up Asif Zardari's sister, Faryal Talpur. He's also locked up several other people. Tapes have surfaced in Pakistan where evidence is now very clear that judges who were sitting on crucial cases, even cases dealing with the Nawaz Sharif, etc., were blackmailed. They were blackmailed with the involvement of ISI. Some judges have made disclosures. Some tapes have surfaced. His own journalists, he now controls his media fully. Columns are being dropped, shows are being dropped. Just last week, Najam Sethi, who's a very well-known columnist and TV show host in the entire world, not just in the subcontinent. He's got global awards. He's somebody who was locked up in jail by Nawaz Sharif as well. He's a wonderful editor. His show was taken off the air, and how is it done? Because he's got a government regulator which just writes orders or directives to TV channels what to do, what not to do, or media or press gets orders on whose column to carry, whose column to not carry. In fact, that's the reason a lot of the Pakistani journalists have been very brave. They have stood up to it, and they are winning a string of international awards now for press freedom. So he has locked up his media. He's clamped down on his media. His judiciary is basically a rubber stamp of the government and the army establishment, or what again Najam Sethi says, he invented this word, miltablishments. So this is military establishment. He's locked up his opposition in jail. Anybody who speaks is locked up in jail. So while there are problems in India, nobody is saying that everything is perfect in India. There are issues in Kashmir, but for him to now try and call out India on civil liberties, on freedom of the judiciary, on freedom of the media is a bit of, let me just say, rubbish. I want to use something stronger, but I'd rather not. Families watch this, and we want more families watching this. Then he goes on to justify, I mean, this is a bizarre speech. He says India, and he's even mixing up his words. He says India, which was the land of karma and nirvana. It's nirvana actually, but he calls it nirvana. India, which was seen to be the land of karma and nirvana, whatever he means with this, is now this terrible land where minorities are being victimized, where Hindus are forcibly converting others to their religion. And then he goes on to say, obviously, he gives compliments to Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah for having had the foresight of forming Pakistan, and he gives you a history, and he says 1937, until 1937, nobody knew they would be Pakistan. But then when Home Rule came, and in the first cabinet in India, Muslim League was not given a seat, Quaid-e-Azam realized that Muslims needed a land of their own, and thank you very much, thank you Jinnah, you did this. That, I suppose, for a Pakistani, it's a simple enough thing to say. Then he talks about what will he do. He says Kashmir is Narendra Modi's strategic blunder. It's very interesting because his entire speech, and you must listen to the other side, you must listen to your adversaries, because that makes you understand their mind and what's going on. There is no point hiding from what your adversaries are saying. He focuses only on Modi and the RSS. He does not talk about India. In fact, mostly he does not talk about India. He only says India will pay for what Modi and the RSS are doing. So he says that Modi has made this historic blunder in Kashmir and he will pay for it. And not just he will pay for it, पर सारी कौम उसके लिए पे करेगी, which means all of India will pay for it. And how will you make India pay? First of all, he says, of course, if India attacks, then we are ready. ईंट का जवाब पत्थर से. That you heard before. I think both sides can line up hundreds of politicians who will deliver a speech like that. But he says then, I will go to the UN. I will go to the Security Council. I will tell the UN, this is why you were formed. This is why Geneva Conventions came in. We'll go to the International Court of Justice. And Modi's blunder will now internationalize this affair. And you can also see some of his frustration coming out, because he says there are 1.25 billion Muslims in the world. They are angry with what is happening with the Kashmiris. They are quiet because their leaders are not interested, but leaders can have other interests or compulsions. We know that. So let's not blame the people. The people know. So once again, this is this desperate appeal to the Muslim community around the world. There is some talk about jung and all, that if India attacks us, and again, very strange statement. He says if India attacks us, they should know this is not a picnicking army. This army has been picking up the bodies of martyrs for the past 30 years. Now, that is one hell of an acknowledgement that Pakistani army has been suffering such high casualties, and if so, where? On the LOC, we know how much action happens, maybe the odd loss of life now and then, barring say Kargil, there's not been a big action on the LOC. So maybe this is an acknowledgement that Pakistani army is suffering heavy casualties on its western side, that is in the tribal areas. So it is a battle hardened army. So for me, this is a very interesting story. He's mentioned Yogi Adityanath, Chief Minister of UP, who he says makes inflammatory statements. He's talked about beef lynchings. So a lot of it is about what is happening in India. And then at some point he also says that India should not forget, or Modi should not forget. In fact, he doesn't even say Modi. For some reason, most Pakistanis don't say Modi. They either say Modi or Modi. So he also says, he pronounces it something like between Modi and Modi. And he says they should know that India has about 18, 19 crore Muslims. Actually, India has about 20 crore Muslims. And they are not going to sit quietly, which I thought was a bit uncalled for. And then to say that RSS and Modi are going after the Christians also, soon they'll go after the Sikhs also, avoidable. But then he is desperate, and that desperation comes out in this speech. And then he goes on to say that in India, the Sikhs, the Dalits, the Christians, they should know what's going to happen to them. And then he gives you a little sociological lecture on why people get radicalized. He said, look at Birmingham, look at Bradford in England. Why are people getting radicalized, Muslims? Because they are marginalized. So this is one big explanation or excuse for radicalization as well. I think the whole speech is a bit bizarre, it's a bit desperate, also a bit dangerous. You can understand the anger over what's happened in Kashmir, but this is really, maybe people will not take it so seriously because he really doesn't control the establishment in his country, but I do really hope that the military in this country, his country, such as it is perhaps, is most likely more prudent than Imran Khan, because this, I would say, is disappointing, hearing from Imran Khan, and he's gone and said this in Muzaffarabad. Now, let me just conclude this part by reminding you that the very fact that Pakistan calls the part of Kashmir under its control Azad Kashmir is a bit of a fraud, because there is no such thing as Azad Kashmir. It either has to be with India or has to be with Pakistan. There was no conception ever of a free or Azad or independent Kashmir. Even in the UN resolutions, in fact, it talks about those 11 UN resolutions, even in those resolutions, there is no option of independence. Even if a plebiscite was to be held, it would be choose India or Pakistan. So for Pakistan to call the part of Kashmir it controls as Azad Kashmir is a farce, and the sooner that farce ends, the better. And in the speech I kept hearing, he kept on saying they will attack Kashmir, they will not confine themselves to Kashmir, they'll come at Pakistan as well. So this desperate effort to try and show that Kashmir on his part, or what is in his government's control, is different from the rest of Pakistan, I think it's a bit laughable. So that was my part talking about part of Cut the Clutter talking about Pakistan, and second, very briefly about Karnataka. Just to remind you that 3 weeks back, Karnataka got a new chief minister. The Congress JDS government was pulled down. There was much celebration in the BJP. 3 weeks later, Karnataka still doesn't have a cabinet. So the state of Karnataka, large, beautiful, rich state with the city of Bangalore, Mysore, so much else in it, has no cabinet for 3 weeks. So how does a cabinet meet there? Maybe the chief minister looks at the mirror and says, I held a cabinet meeting. It's also bizarre. I mean, I'm talking about two bizarre phenomena today. And then it's a state under such a severe flood. People are dying. All but 3 of its districts are under very bad floods. In fact, the worst floods are in North Karnataka, a region which is usually quite dry. Most people don't realize that after Rajasthan, Karnataka has the second largest chunk of arid or dry zones in the country. Those zones are under very crippling floods. And this one chief minister at the age of 76 is now running around from place to place. He doesn't have district ministers, nothing. Now, there are many reasons why this is happening. One of those is that 17 of the MLAs that he had taken away from the Congress JDS combined, mostly from Congress, they've been disqualified by the outgoing speaker. Their cases are pending in the court. They all want to be ministers. If he makes them ministers, he doesn't have any place left for his own people. Second, there is no knowing when the court will do it, but still, all said and done, this is a government that belongs to India's dominant political party that runs the center and that now runs most of the states. For them to keep on running Karnataka without a cabinet, I would say, is a crime on democracy. So now Independence Day will come and go. I do hope that soon enough, without losing any time, that unfortunate state of Karnataka has a cabinet, at least a cabinet.